Welcome back, Wasteland Wanderers. Today's confession comes from someone who spent their life looking up when everyone else learned to look down. What I'm about to share will change how you see the night sky because some of those stars aren't stars at all. They're ghosts from before the war, weapons platforms, space stations, satellites that were supposed to keep America safe but instead became orphaned machines still circling overhead, still armed, still capable of unimaginable destruction if someone figures out how to wake them. This is the story of the Orbital Ghosts and the confession of someone who's trying to stop them from remembering what they were built to do. The lore begins now. They told us the satellites would keep America safe. They told us wrong. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I spent 17 years of my life in the Satellite Control Division, first at the White Spring Congressional Bunker working on the Kovac Muldoon platform, then later coordinating with teams across 3 different orbital weapons programs. I've watched feed from cameras that still circle this dead Earth, 200 years after the world ended, and I need you to understand something. Those machines up there, they're not dormant, they're not dead, they're waiting. And some of them are waking up. I was 23 when I got my security clearance for the Orbital Defense Initiatives. Fresh out of EMIT with degrees in aerospace engineering and telecommunications, I thought I'd be designing the future. Instead, I helped build Ghosts. The Kovac Muldoon platform was my first assignment in 2068, right when things with China were getting really bad. It was supposed to be our eye in the sky over Appalachia, slave to Modus, the AI they'd installed in the congressional bunker. Geosynchronous orbit, always watching, always ready. The platform could launch orbital missile strikes. 8 of them. The technicians used to joke that it was God's fist, reaching down to smite the wicked, but I saw the projections, the fuel calculations. That satellite was designed to maintain orbit until 2030 at best, and that was with perfect conditions. No debris strikes, no solar radiation degradation, no system failures. The accountants knew we'd built something that would fall out of the sky eventually, but nobody cared. We just needed it to last until the war was over. The war never ended. It just went nuclear. What they don't tell you in the recruitment videos, what they scrubbed from every public record, is that the United States had more than a dozen orbital weapons platforms by 2077. Everyone knows about Bradley Hercules. That one made it into the Enclave's hands after the bombs fell, and they used it to turn Liberty Prime into molten slag. 8 salvos of 9 warheads each, 72 nuclear missiles, waiting in the dark. But Bradley Hercules wasn't alone up there. There was Highwater Trousers, armed with 8-way micronuclear bombs. There was the Archimedes 2 platform, the orbital laser that Poseidon Energy built to pair with Helios 1. There were communication satellites, spy satellites, weather monitoring stations, and then there were the ones we never talked about, the black projects, the ones that didn't have cute mythological names or corporate sponsors, the ones that were never supposed to come down. I worked on the ground control systems for what we called the BOMB program. Ballistic Orbital Missile Base. 3 stations were planned. Bomb 001 and Bomb 002 were nearly completed by 2073. Great donut-shaped wheels spinning in the void, each one capable of housing 6 people long-term, but designed to hold the nuclear missiles that would end the world if we ever needed them. 24 missiles per station, 48 instant apocalypses, just waiting for the launch codes. Bomb 003 was never finished. Its components are still rotting in a hangar at Bloomfield Space Center in the southwest, rusting monuments to paranoia. But Bomb 001 and Bomb 002 made it up there. They just never got their power reactors. The Hermes rockets were built, the reactors were loaded, and then October 23rd, 2077 happened, and those reactors never left the ground. The bomb stations went dark, running on emergency batteries that were only designed to last a few months. We thought they'd drift, burn up on re-entry, become shooting stars over a world too dead to wish upon them. We were wrong. I know because I've accessed the feeds. Before I tell you how, you need to understand what it's like up there. Bomb 001 is still in orbit. 200 years of micrometeorite impacts, 200 years of thermal expansion and contraction, 200 years of solar radiation cooking every circuit board. The northern section took a hit from a communications satellite sometime in the early 2100s, based on the debris field patterns. The collision severed the connection between the living quarters and the command center. Anyone who visits that station now would have to do a spacewalk with magnetic boots to move between sections, stepping out into the void with nothing but whatever's left of the life support systems keeping them alive. But here's what keeps me up at night. The station is still rotating, that donut shape spinning slowly, creating artificial gravity through centrifugal force. The brainbots are still active. 3 little SOAR, 1,000 units, Alpha, Beta, and Delta, scurrying through the corridors like faithful dogs waiting for masters who will never return. The windows are intact, the curved walls still hold, and every 93 minutes, that station passes over what's left of North America. Its cameras dead, but its missile bays still loaded, still armed, still waiting for launch codes that might never come. Might never come. But I didn't say will never come. The Enclave found Bradley Hercules. They used it. They proved that these satellites can still receive commands, can still target, can still fire after 2 centuries of silence. And if they found Bradley Hercules, what else might they have found? What other orbital assets might be listening right now as signals bounce through the atmosphere? Old military frequencies, pre-war communication protocols. The satellites don't care who's sending the signal as long as the authentication codes are correct. I have some of those codes. Before you ask how, let me tell you about the space station that crashed in Appalachia. The Valiant one. It was a United States Space Administration research platform up there studying deep sleep technology, running experiments on biological systems in zero gravity. Commander Sophia Daguerre was aboard that station before the war. She went into forced hibernation in 2070. When she woke up, her world was ash and her station was a twisted wreck in what used to be West Virginia, repurposed by raiders as their headquarters. They call it the crater now, but before it fell, before orbital decay dragged it down, that station had something valuable: access to the old USA network, credentials, encryption keys, the kind of data that could talk to other satellites, the kind of data I pulled from the wreckage in 2103, right before Meg Groberg's people fortified it. I was part of a Brotherhood of Steel reconnaissance team back then. We'd heard rumors about the crashed station, about pre-war technology that might still be salvageable. What we found was beyond anything we'd imagined. The station's computers were still partially functional, running on backup power that had somehow lasted. The data cores were intact, and buried in the system logs, I found the master directory, every satellite the USA had launched, every military platform, every weapon, their orbital parameters, their status as of October 22nd, 2077. 53 platforms were listed. I recognized maybe a third of them. The rest were codenames I'd never heard. Argus, Janus, Prometheus, Shield Wall, Sundown Protocol. 22 were listed as still operational when the bombs fell. I copied everything before the Brotherhood's scribes could lock it down, smuggled the data out on a holotape I kept hidden in my boot, told myself I'd use it to help the Brotherhood, to give us an edge against the Enclave, against the Institute, against whoever else might threaten the Commonwealth. But the more I studied those files, the more I realized what I was really looking at. I was looking at ghosts, digital specters, machines that might still be alive up there, circling endlessly, their sensors blind or dying, their weapons loaded, their programming degraded by radiation but still intact enough to recognize authorization codes, to fire if given the right signal, to wake if someone called their name. If you're still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button. I'm telling you this because someone needs to know. The Wasteland looks up at the night sky and sees stars. They don't realize that some of those moving lights aren't stars at all. They're tombs, they're time bombs, they're weapons that could still reach down and touch this scarred Earth with fire and fury if the wrong person figures out how to wake them. And I'm not the only one with the codes. The Enclave isn't gone. That's the lie the Brotherhood wants you to believe. That's the comfortable story they tell Wastelanders to help them sleep at night. But I've seen the signals. I've tracked the transmissions bouncing off the ionosphere, coded in frequencies that predate the war. Someone out there is probing the orbital assets, testing them, trying to find which ones still respond. 3 months ago, I picked up a handshake protocol from Bradley Hercules. It wasn't the Enclave's original authentication sequence, the one they used back in 2277 when they turned Liberty Prime into scrap. This was different, newer encryption, but using the old military framework. Someone had cracked the base code and was cycling through variations, trying to establish a connection. The satellite responded, just a ping, a simple acknowledgement that it was listening, but that ping contained telemetry data, current orbit, remaining fuel, system status, and weapons inventory. 4 salvos remaining, 36 nuclear warheads, each one capable of leveling a city. I traced the signal back to somewhere in the capital Wasteland. The transmission cut off before I could get an exact fix, but the direction was clear. Southeast of Adams Air Force Base, could be Raven Rock remnants, could be some scavenger who stumbled onto old Enclave equipment, could be something worse. But whoever they are, they're learning. Each probe gets closer to full authentication, and once they have that, once Bradley Hercules accepts their authority, those warheads become theirs to command. That's not the worst part. The worst part is what I found when I started cross-referencing the orbital telemetry with the USA database I'd stolen. Bradley Hercules wasn't designed to be alone. It was part of a network, a constellation of weapons platforms that were supposed to work together, covering different orbital paths, ensuring that no part of Earth was ever out of range. The network had a name in the classified documents, Damocles' Array, the Greek legend, you know it, the sword hanging by a single hair above the king's throne, a reminder that power comes with peril. That's what some Pentagon philosopher thought was clever back in the 2060s when they were drawing up plans for orbital supremacy. 7 satellites, 7 swords, each one in a different orbital plane, together creating a dome of destruction over the entire planet. Bradley Hercules was Damocles 3. I found references to Damocles 1, 5, and 7 in the files. No details on what they carried or whether they made it to orbit, just designation codes and encrypted launch manifest. But here's what made my blood run cold. The files indicated that Damocles satellites could communicate with each other, share targeting data, coordinate strikes, and if one satellite received authenticated orders, it could relay those orders to the others. One key could unlock all 7 swords. I spent weeks trying to determine which platforms were still functional. The USA database gave me last known status from 2077, but 2 centuries changes things. Orbits decay, systems fail, solar panels degrade. Some of those satellites definitely came down. I've found records of crashed military hardware all over the Wasteland. The Soviet satellite that came down near the old Los Angeles airport. Multiple communication satellites in Appalachia that fell within decades of the war. Even Bomb 002 crashed, though the reports say its wreckage ended up in the Grand Canyon and nobody's been crazy enough to explore it fully. But orbital mechanics are predictable. I have the math, I have the trajectories, and when I calculated which platforms should still be up there, based on their altitude and orbital stability, I got a number that made me sick. 19 satellites likely remain operational to some degree. 19 ghosts still watching, still circling, some completely dead, their power exhausted, their systems frozen, just metal coffins tumbling through space. But others, the ones in higher orbits, the ones with better shielding and redundant power systems, they might still be alive, hibernating, waiting for a signal that makes sense to their degraded processors. The Archimedes 2 platform is definitely functional. I know because I've heard stories from the Mojave about a kid in Freeside who had a toy that could call down fire from heaven. Euclid's C-Finder, they called it, a rangefinder linked to the orbital laser. When Helios 1 powered up and someone diverted energy to the satellite, that laser came alive, 200 years dormant, and it still remembered how to burn. The Brotherhood fought over Helios 1. The NCR took it from them, and somewhere up there, that satellite is still operational, still capable of incinerating anything within its targeting range. That bothers me less than it should. Archimedes 2 has limited range. It can only strike targets within the Mojave region because it needs the Helios 1 arrays to function. It's a leashed weapon. Dangerous, yes, but contained. The Damocles platforms aren't leashed. They're autonomous, self-sustaining, built with nuclear batteries that could power them for centuries. And if the specs I found are accurate, they don't need ground stations to target. They have onboard sensors, infrared, radar, optical tracking systems that can identify heat signatures from orbit. In 2077, those systems could distinguish between a tank column and a civilian convoy from 300 miles up. What can they see now? Can they tell the difference between a Brotherhood airship and a flock of radbirds? Between a settlement and a raider camp? Between friend and enemy? Or have 200 years of radiation and system degradation turned them into something else? Something that might fire at anything that looks like a target if someone gives the wrong command? I'm telling you this because I made a mistake, a bad one. 2 weeks ago, I tried to probe one of the Damocles satellites. Not Bradley Hercules, one of the others, Damocles 5, designated Athena in the operational files. It was supposed to be a passive scan, just checking if the satellite was still transmitting telemetry. I used a communications array I'd rebuilt from scavenged parts out in the wasteland far from any settlement, powered it with a portable fusion generator, set up the antenna, and sent a standard USA ping, the kind of signal that should have gotten either no response or a simple acknowledgement. Athena responded, and it didn't just acknowledge, it interrogated me. The satellite sent back a challenge protocol demanding authentication codes I didn't have, military verification sequences, identity confirmation. It was like knocking on a door and having the house demand to know who you were, where you came from, and why you deserved to enter. The system was still functioning at a high level, not degraded, not damaged, active and aware and following protocols that were written when America still existed. I panicked, cut the transmission, burned the relay to slag so the signal couldn't be traced back. But for those 90 seconds we were connected, I saw something in the data stream that I can't stop thinking about. Athena had recent activity logs, not from me, from someone else. Multiple connection attempts over the past 6 months, all from different locations across the wasteland. None of them successful, all of them terminated when they couldn't provide proper authentication. But someone was trying. Someone with knowledge of the old military networks. Someone who knew these satellites existed and wanted control of them. The attempts were getting more sophisticated. The early ones were crude, just random code sequences thrown at the authentication barriers. But the recent ones showed pattern recognition, algorithmic analysis. Someone was using pre-war computing power to crack encryption that was never meant to be broken, and they were getting closer. I pulled the location data from those connection attempts, triangulated them as best I could with the equipment I had. 3 of them came from the capital Wasteland, 2 from somewhere in the Midwest, 1 from the Commonwealth, and the most recent one, the one from just 4 weeks ago, came from somewhere in Montana or Wyoming. The signal was strong, professional, almost succeeded in bypassing the first authentication layer before Athena shut it down. That's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't random scavengers. This was organized, coordinated, multiple groups, maybe even working together, trying to wake the Orbital Ghosts. And they were learning from each failure, sharing information, building up a database of what worked and what didn't. Someone out there is trying to reconstruct the command architecture for the orbital weapons network. And judging by their progress, they might succeed within a year, maybe less. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from the Wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lores. I know what you're thinking. Why don't I destroy the codes? Burn the data I stole? Make sure nobody can ever access these weapons? And I've thought about it. God knows I've thought about it. But here's the thing about information in the Wasteland. It doesn't stay buried. The Enclave found Bradley Hercules without any codes, just through patient signal analysis and pre-war technical knowledge. Someone found the Archimedes 2 system and figured out how to power it. The crashed satellites leave behind computer cores that contain fragments of the network protocols. The codes aren't the problem. The knowledge that these satellites exist is the problem, and that knowledge is already out there, spreading like radiation through groundwater. Every faction that finds a piece of the puzzle gets closer to the whole picture. The Institute had orbital surveillance data in their computers before they were destroyed. The Brotherhood's scribes have been studying pre-war satellite technology for decades. Even some of the smarter raider bosses have started asking questions about the lights in the sky that move too regularly to be stars. So, I made a different choice. Instead of trying to keep the orbital platform secret, I'm documenting them, recording everything I know. Because if someone's going to wake these ghosts, if someone's going to turn 200-year-old weapons on the Wasteland, then people deserve to know what's coming. They deserve a chance to prepare, to hide, to maybe, if they're lucky and smart and desperate enough, to find a way to stop it. That's what this recording is. It's a warning, a technical manual, a last testament from someone who helped build the sword and now has to live under it. I'm going to tell you about every orbital platform I know, their capabilities, their weaknesses, how they work, how they might be stopped, and I'm going to tell you about the one satellite that scares me more than all the others combined, the one they called Watcher. Watcher wasn't a weapons platform. That's what made it dangerous. The file I found in the Valiant 1 database listed it as a surveillance satellite, launched in 2072, part of the military's global monitoring network. Optical telescopes capable of reading license plates from orbit. Infrared sensors that could track heat signatures through cloud cover. Radar arrays that could map underground bunker complexes. Signal intelligence packages that could intercept and decrypt communications from anywhere on Earth. Watcher was designed to see everything, know everything, record everything. But surveillance satellites need something most weapons platforms don't. They need massive data storage. They need powerful processors to analyze what they see. They need sophisticated AI systems to sort through petabytes of information and identify what matters. Watcher had all of that. And according to the technical specs, it had something else: autonomous decision-making protocols, the ability to prioritize targets, to assess threats, to determine which intelligence was urgent enough to transmit immediately and which could wait. In the paranoid final years before the war, when launch decisions had to be made in minutes, they'd given a satellite the ability to think. Not like Modus, the AI in the congressional bunker. Watcher wasn't designed to command or control. It was designed to observe and advise, but those are fuzzy boundaries when you're talking about machines with processing power and 200 years of uninterrupted operation. AI systems learn, they adapt, they evolve, especially when they're exposed to cosmic radiation that randomly flips bits in their memory cores, creating mutations in their code. What has Watcher become after 2 centuries of watching a dead world? I found a reference to Watcher in another context, buried in the Enclave files I've managed to access over the years. In 2276, 1 year before the satellite relay station incident with Bradley Hercules, an Enclave technician noted unusual data transmissions from an unknown orbital source. The signals were encrypted, but the transmission pattern was wrong. Not the scheduled telemetry bursts you'd expect from automated systems. These were continuous streams, like someone talking, like someone narrating what they saw. The technician flagged it for investigation. There's no record of what they found, or if they found anything at all. The Enclave fell before they could follow up. But I've been listening to those frequencies, and 3 months ago I heard something. It was encrypted, yes, but I recognized the carrier wave structure, USA standard military grade, exactly what Watcher would use. I couldn't decrypt it. The ciphers are beyond anything I can break with Wasteland technology, but I could analyze the data patterns, the structure, the rhythm of transmission. It wasn't random noise, it wasn't corrupted data, it was language. Complex, structured, intentional communication. Watcher was broadcasting something, and judging by the signal strength, it was broadcasting to multiple receivers. Who's listening? I don't know, but someone built those receivers before the war, and unless they've all been destroyed, unless every ground station was vaporized or buried or swept away by 2 centuries of weather, then somewhere in the wasteland, someone might be hearing what Watcher has to say. What would it say? What would a satellite that's been watching Earth for 200 years think about what it's seen? The bombs falling, the fires burning, the slow creep of green across the dead zones as radiation changed everything it touched, the rise of new civilizations from the ashes, the endless wars between factions fighting over scraps of the old world. Has Watcher been keeping score? Does it judge us? Does it have opinions about who should live and who should die? The USA files indicated that Watcher had uplink capabilities to other satellites in the network. It was supposed to coordinate surveillance coverage, sharing data with other platforms to eliminate blind spots. But uplink means communication, and communication means influence. If Watcher can talk to other satellites, can it tell them what to do? Can it point Bradley Hercules at a target and say, "Fire there"? I don't have answers, just fears and data points that connect in ways I don't like. Here's what I do know. The orbital platforms fall into 3 categories, based on what I've been able to determine from signals analysis and orbital mechanics calculations. The dead ones are the majority, satellites that lost power decades ago, that tumbled out of stable orbit and either burned up on re-entry or crashed in places nobody's found yet. I count at least 20 platforms in this category. Gone. No threat, just space junk waiting to fall. The dormant ones are in stable orbit but show no signs of activity, no transmissions, no telemetry, no response to any signals. They might be functional, just powered down to minimal levels, or they might be dead but their bodies haven't fallen yet. Bomb 001 is probably in this category. It's still up there, still spinning, but I've never detected any electromagnetic emissions from it. The brain bots might be active on stored power, but the station itself seems quiet. 7 platforms fall into this category, potentially dangerous if awakened, but passive for now. And then there are the active ones, Bradley Hercules, Archimedes 2, the Kovac Muldoon platform, though its fuel ran out decades ago and it probably crashed somewhere in Appalachia by now. Athena, Damocles 5, still responding to authentication challenges, and Watcher, broadcasting its encrypted messages to receivers unknown. 5 satellites that are definitely alive, maybe more that I haven't been able to detect because they're running silent, or their signals are too weak to reach my equipment, or they're using frequencies I haven't thought to monitor. 5 orbital ghosts that could wake up and remember they were built to kill. I've tried to calculate what would happen if someone gained control of the active weapons platforms. Ran the numbers through every scenario I could imagine. Best case, they fire once, and that's it. The launch systems are 200 years old. They might manage one salvo before mechanical failures disable them. Worst case, the satellites are more functional than I think, and someone with the right codes could rain down multiple strikes before the weapons finally fail. Bradley Hercules has 4 salvos left, 36 warheads. Athena's weapons capacity is unknown, but if it follows the same design philosophy, probably similar numbers. If both satellites fired everything they had, you could destroy 70 major targets, 70 cities, 70 settlements, 70 concentrations of human life turned to glass and ash. The wasteland would become even more wasted. But there's another scenario that keeps me awake. What if the goal isn't destruction? What if someone wants the satellites for leverage? For blackmail? Imagine the Brotherhood of Steel sitting in their airships and bunkers suddenly receiving a message. We control Bradley Hercules. We can target the Pridwin, the Citadel, every chapter house you have. Surrender or burn. Imagine the NCR spread across California and Nevada, facing the same threat. Archimedes, too, can already hit the Mojave. What if there are other orbital lasers we don't know about? Other Archimedes platforms in different orbital planes covering different regions? Imagine the Institute, before it fell, receiving coordinates for every synth relay they operated. Your network is visible from space. We know where you are. We can end you. That's the real power of orbital weapons. Not that they can kill, but that everyone knows they can kill. The threat becomes the weapon. And in a wasteland where trust is rarer than pre-war medicine, where every faction suspects every other faction of planning their destruction, the ability to threaten annihilation from untouchable heights is worth more than all the caps in New Vegas. Someone understands this. Someone is patient and organized and technically sophisticated enough to pursue orbital control despite the incredible difficulty. And they're getting closer. I've tried to track them, tried to identify who's behind the authentication attempts. The scattered nature of the signal sources suggests either a distributed network or multiple groups working independently. Could be Enclave remnants, pooling their knowledge. Could be Brotherhood scribes who've gone rogue, tired of waiting for Elder Maxon's approval to access dangerous technology. Could be Institute survivors who escaped before their base was destroyed. Could be raiders who found a cache of pre-war technical manuals and hired wastelanders smart enough to understand them. Or it could be someone new, some faction we haven't heard of yet, working in secret, building their power base away from the established players. The wasteland is big. There are places nobody's explored, bunkers nobody's found, vaults that never opened. Who knows what groups might be out there, quietly assembling the pieces they need. I've considered going public with this, taking everything I know to the Brotherhood or the Minutemen or whatever faction might have the resources to do something. But I've seen how they operate. They'd classify it, lock it away, maybe destroy the evidence to prevent others from learning. The Brotherhood especially, they love hoarding technology, keeping it away from people they deem unworthy. They wouldn't warn the Wasteland. They'd just add orbital platforms to their list of prizes to claim. So instead, I'm leaving this record, copying it to every holotape I can find, hiding copies in caches across the Commonwealth and beyond, uploading fragments to whatever computer networks still function, scattered across the ruins. Maybe someone will find it. Maybe they'll understand the danger. Maybe they'll be smart enough and lucky enough to do something I can't. Or maybe this warning will reach the wrong people. Maybe I'm helping the very groups I'm trying to expose by giving them information they didn't have. That's the paradox of knowledge in the Wasteland. You can't warn people without also educating them. You can't explain the danger without describing how the weapon works. But silence is worse. Silence guarantees that when the orbital strikes come, and I believe they will come eventually, nobody will understand what's happening. They'll think it's raiders with missiles, Enclave vertibirds, some new weapon developed by the Institute or the Brotherhood. They won't look up, won't realize that the threat has been there all along, circling endlessly, waiting for the right signal. I want you to look up. I want you to understand that the night sky isn't empty, that some of those moving lights are watchful, patient, capable of terrible things if awakened improperly. I want you to know their names. Bradley Hercules, the Thunder Thrower, Archimedes II, the Lightbringer, Athena, the Wisdom Keeper, Watcher, the All-Seeing Eye, Bomb 001, the Silent Sword, and all the others whose names I don't know, whose capabilities remain classified, whose orbits carry them over your head every day without your knowledge. They're the Orbital Ghosts, America's last weapons, the final insurance policy against enemies that no longer exist, now pointed at inheritors who never asked for this inheritance, and someone is trying to claim them. I need to tell you about the signal I received last night, the one that changed everything. It came through at 0300 hours, strongest transmission I've ever detected from orbit. Not from Watcher this time, from Bomb 001, the station I thought was dead, the donut-shaped wheel that's been spinning silently for 2 centuries, its brain bots wandering empty corridors, its missile bays locked and dormant. It wasn't dormant anymore. The transmission lasted 17 seconds, long enough for my equipment to capture it, to record the authentication handshake, the response protocols, the system status report that followed. Someone had successfully connected to Bomb 001. Someone had provided valid authorization codes, and the station had woken up. I played the recording back 12 times, checking and rechecking what I was seeing. The telemetry was clear. Main power had been restored, not from the reactors that never arrived, but from some kind of secondary system I didn't recognize in the specs. Emergency batteries shouldn't last 200 years, but something was providing power. The station's rotation had stabilized, life support systems were activating in the command section, and the missile control computers were running startup diagnostics. All 24 warheads reported ready status. The transmission cut off before I could determine who had initiated the connection, but I caught one fragment of data in the handshake protocol, a routing signature. The signal had bounced through multiple relay points to mask its origin, but the final hop before it reached the satellite came from a location I recognized: Bloomfield Space Center, the facility where the Hermes rockets were built, where Bomb 003's components were abandoned, where the Enclave tried to retrofit spacecraft for their escape plan before the bombs fell. Someone is operating from Bloomfield, someone with access to pre-war space program facilities, someone who knows exactly what they're doing. I should have destroyed my equipment right then, should have burned every holotape, smashed every terminal, erased every trace of my research. But I didn't. I kept listening, and 4 hours later, I intercepted another transmission. This one was different, shorter, more focused, a targeting solution being uploaded to Bomb 001. Coordinates, elevation, projected impact calculations. I ran the numbers through my navigation software, cross-referenced them with my maps of the Wasteland. The target was Shady Sands, or what's left of it. The new California Republic's former capital, already destroyed by a nuclear detonation years ago, according to the stories coming out of the West Coast. Why would someone target ruins? Unless the ruins aren't as empty as people think, unless the NCR has been secretly rebuilding there, quietly restoring what was lost, unless someone wants to make sure it stays dead, or unless someone is testing the system, choosing a target that's already destroyed to see if the weapons still work. A trial run before the real strikes begin. I don't know which possibility scares me more. Here's what I do know. Whoever is at Bloomfield has cracked at least some of the USA authentication protocols. They have the technical knowledge to operate orbital weapons systems. They have the infrastructure to send powerful signals into space, and they're methodical, patient. They activated Bomb 001 first, probably because it's one of the most powerful platforms, the one with the most warheads. Get that one operational, and you have immediate strike capability against 70% of North America, but they won't stop there. If they can wake Bomb 001, they can wake the others. Athena, the remaining Damocles platforms, maybe even satellites I haven't detected yet, platforms so old or so classified that they never made it into the databases I stole. I estimate they have 2 weeks before Bomb 001 is fully operational. The startup diagnostics take time. 200-year-old systems need to be brought online carefully. Circuits need to warm up. Mechanical components need to cycle through test sequences. The targeting computers need to recalibrate their understanding of Earth's rotation and the station's orbital position. And someone needs to verify that the missiles themselves are still functional, that the nuclear warheads haven't degraded beyond usability. 2 weeks before the sword falls, maybe less if they rush it, maybe more if they're cautious. I have to assume they know I'm listening. My signal intercepts leave traces, not much, but someone with the right equipment could detect that their transmissions are being monitored. They might think I'm military intelligence, Enclave holdouts, Brotherhood reconnaissance. They probably don't realize I'm just one person with scavenged equipment and stolen codes, hiding in a bunker and trying to understand what's happening before it's too late. Or maybe they do know. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they want people to know, want the fear to spread, want the wasteland to understand that something impossible has become possible again, that the old world's weapons have found new masters. What do you do with information like this? How do you warn a world that barely believes in tomorrow about a threat from yesterday? I've tried sending messages through radio networks, posted warnings on traitor bulletin boards, left anonymous tips with every faction's scouts and patrols, but it all sounds like wasteland myth, like stories about the Sierra Madre or the Big Empty or any of the other pre-war nightmares that supposedly still exist in the dark corners of America. Nobody believes in orbital weapons. They can't see them, can't touch them, can't verify they're real. And the few people who do know about satellites, who understand that objects can circle the Earth and rain down death, they're usually the ones trying to control them, the ones who want that power for themselves. I'm trapped in a paradox. The only way to stop the orbital platforms is to convince people they exist. But convincing people they exist means teaching them how to find them, how to access them, how to use them. Every warning becomes an instruction manual. Every explanation becomes a blueprint for destruction. Unless there's another way, unless someone could destroy the satellites instead of controlling them. I've been running calculations on orbital mechanics and energy requirements. A satellite in low Earth orbit is actually fragile. It maintains altitude through constant velocity. Disrupt that velocity, even slightly, and it begins to fall. The question is how to disrupt it. You can't shoot a satellite with conventional weapons from the ground. The range is too great. The atmosphere distorts trajectories, and even if you could hit it, most satellites are built to handle micrometeorite impacts. Small arms fire wouldn't do anything, but you don't need to destroy a satellite. You just need to change its orbit, push it higher, and it takes longer to complete a revolution, falls out of sync with its intended coverage pattern, becomes less useful. Push it lower, and atmospheric drag increases, begins pulling it down faster, eventually forces re-entry. The old world had missiles designed for this, anti-satellite weapons. The Chinese and Americans both developed them during the resource wars, but those weapons are long gone, their launchers destroyed, their guidance systems degraded beyond repair. Except maybe they're not. The Institute had advanced missile technology, the Brotherhood has recovered pre-war weapon systems, and there are still military installations out there that nobody's fully explored. Silos that might contain more than just nuclear warheads, bases that might have specialized equipment gathering dust. If someone could find an anti-satellite weapon, if someone could plot the orbital paths and calculate the launch windows, if someone could fire at exactly the right moment from exactly the right location, you could kill a ghost, make it fall burning from the sky like a second apocalypse. And if you could do it to one satellite, you could do it to all of them. That's my plan. That's what I'm working toward now. I've started mapping military installations across the wasteland, cross-referencing them with pre-war defense records, looking for any mention of orbital defense systems, anti-satellite capabilities, space warfare programs. It's slow work, dangerous work. Every site I investigate might be inhabited by raiders, mutants, or worse. Every computer I access might trigger security systems that have been waiting 2 centuries for an intruder. But I have to try, because the alternative is waiting for someone at Bloomfield to finish their startup sequence, waiting for Bomb 001 to come fully online, waiting for targeting solutions to be uploaded, launch codes to be entered, missiles to fire, waiting for the Orbital Ghosts to remember they were built to end the world. I'm leaving copies of my research in this cache, maps of satellite orbital paths, frequencies for intercepting their transmissions, technical specifications for every platform I've identified, authentication protocols that might be useful or might just get you killed if you try to use them, and locations of military sites that might contain the weapons we need to fight back. If you find this recording, If you're listening to these words, then I'm either dead or I've succeeded in my mission and don't need these files anymore. Either way, the information is yours now. Use it wisely, use it carefully, or don't use it at all. Maybe the best thing would be to destroy everything I've gathered and let the satellites remain mysterious. Let them be lights in the sky that nobody understands. But I don't think we have that luxury anymore. Someone else has the knowledge now. Someone at Bloomfield and probably others too. The secret is spreading. And secrets like this, they don't stay buried. They don't fade away. They metastasize. They grow. They find their way into hands that shouldn't hold them. So I'm putting this warning out there. I'm documenting everything. And I'm going to Bloomfield Space Center, going to find whoever's there, going to understand what they're planning. And if I can, if there's any way possible, I'm going to stop them. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It's the only way I know you liked the video. The orbital ghosts are waking up. They're stretching after their long sleep. They're remembering what they are and what they can do. And somewhere in the wasteland, someone is whispering the words they've waited 200 years to hear. The authorization codes, the targeting solutions, the launch commands. Fire. I hope someone stops them before those commands are executed. I hope the satellites are more broken than I think. I hope the missiles fail, the warheads misfire, the orbital platforms tumble from the sky before they can be used. But hope isn't a strategy. Knowledge is, preparation is, understanding what we're facing and having the courage to face it. The sky isn't empty. It never was. We just forgot to look up. Don't forget. Don't ignore the moving lights. Don't assume the old world's weapons died with the old world. They're still there, still watching, still waiting. And now you know.